Welcome to another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals, whatever they may be. I'm joined as always by our other host, Mr. Corey C.
Because we blessed. I just so happen to work hard.
Ooh, right, no bad. If there's something in your life that you want to change, commit today and stop wasting
time. Get 1% better every single day and do something positive.
We want you to go out and get it. If you don't live by nothing else, live by 2 R's. You either got reasons or you got results. Choose which one you have in your life today. Welcome to another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals, whatever those goals may be. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Corey Seague. How's it going, Corey?
Oh man, it's another day to be blessed. Man, I'm really, I told y'all last week I was excited, for Sean, but I'm really excited for this young man we got on the show today, because I think his story is the ultimate, like life. You're not about to show me what's up, but so yeah, I'm real excited today.
Oh, absolutely. So we want to welcome Mr. Josh D. Brown Sr. to the call. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so I don't want to read just off a piece of paper your bio, your background. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and then we'll just jump right into your story, because this information I think people need to hear.
Well, I was born and raised in a small town in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and in a community where really everybody knows everybody, where you really couldn't get away with much without somebody finding out. So I was brought up in a family type setting throughout most of my life, and I went on to be an athlete in high school. I went and played basketball, track, baseball, and football in college. And I graduated from Fairmont State University. I went on to be a supervisor at FedEx. I later went on to be a college football coach at Fairmont State University. When I left there, I went to be an offensive coordinator at my alma mater, Jefferson High School, where we really turned the program around. They were like 3-27 when we took over. And then my last year there, we actually went to the playoffs. So we, brought life back to the school. And then around that time is when I guess we can say my story started to come into light, to which you guys have me here right now.
Got you. So we understand that your story took that turn. Involving alcohol, involving the death of someone, involving you spending some time in jail. And then you were able to come out and you were able to overcome. So with alcohol addiction, take us back to the beginning. When did it start? When and did alcohol start for you, and why?
Well, alcohol actually started for me, not with me drinking it. Alcohol started with me seeing somebody else do it. And he was my stepfather, and I love him to death. And he was a great man. He did, everything, for me growing up, and, was, I would say, overall great role model, but he was a drinker. And when I was younger, you're walking around the house and he would just sometimes be like, Josh, grab me a beer, or Josh, give me this. So like, I guess him thinking nothing of it, I would go grab it. And, as I looked up to him, I started to get intrigued by, open up that refrigerator. I always said, like, when I opened up the refrigerator, it was like a light. And it was like, the moment that, there's this alcoholic beverage. And I felt like it made him so happy. Like that was his happy place. He would come home from work, and he was a hardworking man, working 16 some hours a day all the time. And he really took care of the family. And, so I didn't see anything wrong with it. And I remember I was 12. And I had a next door neighbor who was related to me, and I was going to walk to school. And I had came up with the bright idea, like, hey, let's drink this beer going to school. Because my mother, she had worked first shift. So she left at like 6 o'clock, 7 in the morning, but she would call me to make sure I was up, make sure I was ready to go to school. So they didn't know what was going on. So we drank the beer walking to school. And I remember, it was like, hey, whatever y'all do, man, don't say nothing. Do just act normal. And I was so intrigued by my ability to get away with it. How I would go to school and at 12 and nobody know, and just like it was like a game in my head. Like, oh man, I just did this and nobody's gonna find out. Hey, I wonder if I could do it again tomorrow. And that's when it started, this roller coaster of what can I do to get away with my ability to drink. And then it turned into my ability to smoke without people finding out, because I wasn't really a trouble kid. I maybe had a smart mouth, but I wasn't in a lot of trouble like that to where people were watching over me. So it was a lot easier for me to sneak this and get it. And then it just became that. It just became like a game to me, a habit that it was just hard for me to shake.
Oh, wow. So listening to you, do you feel like today that you going, opening that refrigerator, getting that drink it began to be a subconscious impression and almost a habit to say, hey, I'm seeing that when I pass him this beer, there's some happiness there. I may be able to get some happiness as well at some point in time by going in and getting the same thing.
Yeah, see, well, I think what it was most is that I didn't like my stepdad when he first moved with me and my mother. Like, I tried everything in my power to get rid of him because I wanted my father in my life. And the more and more I tried to get him away, the more and more like I felt like he started to care for me the most. So I really created a strong bond. And like our bond was to sit there like and watch sports. I said that I started this at 12. When I was 12, he was coaching me, in baseball. So our bond would be sitting there and watching sports. I grab him a beer, I go get a soda, and like he would just be so at peace. And then it was like, yo, like, okay, here's the day that I always wanted. And I seen that he was, drinking. And like I said, he was doing everything he was supposed to do. He wasn't in trouble. He wasn't doing anything to make me be like, oh, so like I seen a great man who liked to drink and just thought, okay, like this is something normal. And it became normal to me.
Yeah, Tyrus, I wanna take it a step back though. So you said something that really resonated with me. And I have family members like this. I got friends like this. So you said your alcoholism didn't even start with the drinking itself. Now I listen to some country music. And then a lot of times in country music, they'd be like, man, just grab a beer, have your friends, blah, blah, blah. One of my favorite songs is by this artist, Luke Combs. And he got a song that said, beer never broke my heart. And I got deep into that thing one time and was like, man, you know what? This can be seen as something else. Because in the song, he talks about like, everything else may hurt him or like somebody may dump him, blah, blah, blah. But when he has his beer, he's fine. But I was like, man, that's kind of deep, because when I think about alcoholism or just anybody being an alcoholic in general, it's what I see other people doing. And so I had cousins who like, man, they drinking every night after they get off work. Like I got cousins who just, oh man, it's just 2 or 3 beers every night or something like that. And then it turns into something else. But what I realize is those around them, they start to emulate that. And they say, well, ain't nothing wrong. He's a good person. They're a good person. Man, let me just pop a beer. Let me just fix me a drink tonight or something. Right. And then all of a sudden, you drunk on the couch, you done fell asleep, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. But I said all that to say, I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people think once the actual drink happens, that's when I become alcoholic. But I think in reality, what happens is when someone sees it, they try to emulate that and then come back and say, oh, well, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm just doing what they were doing. And they're not a bad person.
Yeah, definitely. In my mind, I was a drinker before I took the first drink. I knew, I'd say for a while, that I was going to drink. I just didn't know when, where, and how. And literally, it was just me waking up one day. They had a little small refrigerator. There was ice house in it. And I just said, man, I'm going to pick these 2 up and I'm just going to drink it going to school. I mean, had I got caught, maybe, it would have changed my perspective, because I would have, got in trouble for my actions. But the day that I started and I got away with it, it was just like off to the races for me.
Now, I can resonate with you on that because when I'm thinking about the beginning, and I had family members that drink. My dad was a huge drinker before he went to prison, and then it kind of shifted down. I remember as a youth, even seeing them give a little bit of alcohol to kids, wine cooler, soft stuff, no hard stuff, just soft stuff, kind of raising you in it. And so I definitely see how it can start before the drink because you see everybody doing it. And like you said, everybody works hard. Nobody's doing anything crazy. And it's a normal thing. Now, when you took off to the races, talk to us about that transition. When did it start becoming an issue for you? Or when do you feel like there became a point to where it gripped you?
The first day it started.
Oh, wow.
Because I was a mischievous kid, I'd say. So just getting away with it just was like, wow. Hey, I did it. Like, I think that would probably be the greatest way to describe that day. It's like, yo, I did it. Because we walked home and it was like, yo, man, we got away with it. We got away with it. And it was like, okay, when can we do it again? And then when can we do it again? And then when can we do it again? And then so like you gotta realize, like when I was 12, where I was living at, I drank that beer and walked to elementary. Like that's how young it had started. So then when I got into junior high, it didn't even matter to me anymore. Like I was just bold. Like I was just doing it with confidence. And I think probably the one thing that really catapulted me into it, like with having the confidence when I got in middle school was, and it wasn't even alcohol. At this time, I had started smoking, and I was a really good athlete. And that came with some privileges that most kids probably shouldn't have. And what I mean by that is I was in track practice. We were stretching, and I'll never forget it. And I crossed my leg over the stretch, and a lighter fell out of my pocket. And the coach was sitting right beside me. And he picked it up. He got mad. He stormed off. And me, he's like, oh, I got to get my story straight. He comes back. I'm like, look, man, my mom smokes. She had these pants, and I didn't even know it was in there. And he bought it. And then it was like, yo, it's that easy. He wasn't going to say nothing to me because he was too busy worrying about winning track meets. He accepted the fact that, oh, mommy had it. Mommy didn't have that, because the crazy part is that same morning I had walked to school and smoked. And another kid had said in the cafeteria, yo, y'all smell like weed. And that same coach came up to me. He's like, did you do anything to make you, giggly like this? I looked at him like, nah, what are you talking about? At 13 or 14, I had that confidence of like, man, I don't care if you're a daughter or not. Nah, like, what you coming at me sideways for? And he bought it. So he really like gave me the confidence that's like, hey, man, I was confident before, but when you show me that I can get away with this, it was over.
Wow. Wow. And so as you continue through this process, it sounds like even though you were drinking, you started smoking, you were still able to perform and function.
Oh, yes, man. I think, and you look back at it now, man, people really didn't have a clue. I ran track at Jefferson High School, and my last 2 years, my junior and senior year, I went 4 for 4 at the state track meet, winning gold medals in all four races. And I was high and intoxicated on all 8 of them.
Wow.
So my junior year, I won the 200, the 400, the 4x1, and the 4x2. And I was intoxicated and drunk. And high. And then in my senior year, I won the 1, the 2, the 4, and 4x1. And I was intoxicated and high. And I remember the hardest race was the 400. We ran at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was smoking and stuff right before we got on the bus. And, I'm sitting there like, man, I don't think I should have did this today. And I just wasn't feeling it. I won. I remember going up behind the bleachers, and I'm throwing up, grabbing the trash can. And there, a lot of people were really interested in seeing me run the 100-meter dash against another kid. And I remember him walking by, like pointing like to one of our coaches, like, look, he ain't even going to be ready. And they just thought like, oh, something was wrong with me the whole time. Like, man, I'm hammered. Like, this is 9 o'clock in the morning.
Nervous.
I have got to sober up because I'm not losing this race. You know what I mean? But it became such a norm for me that I couldn't even tell you how I did it. I know we ran at Morgantown University, West Virginia University one time, and it was the best time that I ever ran. And I was rolling on ecstasy. And I blazed the time. I'll never forget it. And the kid beat me. And I got out early on him in the 100-meter dash, and he beat me like the last maybe couple steps. My body just shut down. Like literally, I couldn't finish, and it was so close that people thought I won. But the time was so good. I remember us looking at each other, and he said to me, he was like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to call Michigan." And I was like, I'm calling Louisville, because I was trying to go to Louisville and they wanted a 10-500. And, I was trying to get to that point to, I could go to school there, and we ran those amazing times. And I'm sitting there like, man, like I haven't even been sleeping 48 hours. I was in the club in Morgantown at the college the night before. I left the club to go, back to the house, shower, wash my face, and get to the track meet. But that was the norm. That was who I was. And that was just that was Josh.
Whoa. So at this point, now we're kind of getting into the story of when things take that turn. They were already turning, but that real turn for you. And do you feel like you were untouchable with it? Like, I can drive, I can function, I can work, I can run, I can do whatever I need to do. Because I remember people were the designated drunk drivers.
That was me. I remember vaguely, man. We would go out, and first of all, I got my first car when I was 16 in high school. I was in 10th grade. So I was always the driver, to school, to the games, to the mall, wherever. But I was the partier. And I remember I was the guy who, if you didn't party, I was going to show you how to party. Don't worry, I got you. I'm going to get the alcohol. I got the car. I got the house. I got the girls. We're set. And a lot of people started to hang with me and had so much fun. And, we enjoyed it to the point to where it was like, hey, Slope got us. Hey, Slope got us. And I remember my friends would always say, oh, he's the best drunk driver. And that started early. And that really made me bold in the ability to drink and drive. Because people would brag about how well I would drink and drive. And I think this would be the first time anybody's ever heard this publicly, me say this. I think the first time I was drinking and driving, I was probably 13. I used to steal my aunt's car when she was asleep. She used to sleep so hard she wouldn't know. I would sneak in her room. I would put my hands completely over the keys, and I would squeeze it so it wouldn't make no noise.
Yeah.
And I would pick it up, and I used to have a bottle of E&J. And, the crazy part is, I'm not going to say his name, but the person who I went to go pick up, he had license. And I'm driving the car, and I'm 13 with a bottle, and we cruising. I'm stopping at the local gas station getting gas. Back when you didn't have to prepay for your gas.
Mm-hmm.
All of this started really early. I started drinking when I was 12, and the first time I was probably drinking and driving was 13. And I've been driving ever since. And I think out of all those times, I only had one scare. I think probably when I was about 14, I almost wrecked once. And I mean, it scared the lights out of me. So I think for like a month, I didn't drive. But after that, I got back behind the wheel, and I was just back at it.
Wow. How did it make you feel for people to call you that best drunk driver, designated drunk driver? How did it make you feel? I know it emboldened you to do it more, but did it bring happiness? Did it bring a bravado? Did it bring another kind of emotion to have you continue to do it, or you was just in the groove?
I think it literally, man, it was just who I was. Like, I just accepted it that, like, oh man, this is me. Like, the thought process of me drinking and driving would be the same thought process of me tying my shoe in the morning. Like, it wasn't a thought. It was just, we're good because we always get home. And not only we always get home, I had people like, hey, yeah, we're good, like encouraging it, like, you know, confirmation. Hey, we got it. Like, just sitting there, like, I'm like, man, geez, hold on, y'all. Hey, give me a water, you know? Give me, and hey, we going. And so it was just like, it was just me. It became just like athletics. I mean, I was good, and so it wasn't like this big for me. It was just something that, like, it came natural. So it was just a part of me. So it was just the everyday living for me.
Yeah, now, Tyrus, I got something for that though, because I think a lot of times, especially when we're younger, you saying this happened at 13. Have you identified what that underlying reason why you kept doing it was for? So, and the reason I say that is because at 13, and people are like, man, Josh got the car, he can get us where we're going. You got the bottles. Like, even at 16, you can get the girls, whatever age, you know what I'm saying? Have you identified something in yourself that says, you know what? I kept drinking because, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be that, but I kept drinking because that was my validation. Or I kept drinking because, man, the homies love that. So I feel great, you know, because that's who they love. Like, has anything like that kind of crossed it, or was it just a general, like, yo, I'm just addicted to this stuff right now?
It was just the joy in getting away with stuff. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but at the same time, it was like, you can't catch me. You ain't going to catch me, because
I feel that.
I was hanging with, they didn't want their parents to know what they were doing. So I knew that they weren't going to tell on me. And then, you know, my other home, like, those are people that just started to flock with us. But the homeboys, man, we got it. We good. Hey, man, tell mom I'm at your house. Hey, tell mom I'm at your house. So all four of our parents think, hey, we all here. But like I told you, I grew up in a small town to where, like, I don't even remember, like, a lot of times having a babysitter. I mean, we had, like, elders that were, like, retired and, you know, they were around, but it was like we all took care of each other. So if I'm like, hey, I'm staying at X, you staying at Y, you staying at Z, all right, because it was all in walking distance.
Yep.
So it was really easy for us to manipulate sometimes to our parents and what we were doing, because it was just like, oh, I'm down to my cousins. Now, I know when I say that, sometimes people like talk about my mom or think that she wasn't paying attention to me. When I got real bad in high school, when I was in the 9th grade, I played varsity sports. So I didn't even hang out with people my age. I didn't hang out with the 14 and 15-year-olds. I was hanging out with the 16, 17, and 18-year-old. And I had cousins that were actually on the teams with me, who my mother trusted, and, you know, and they were never in trouble. But what happened was they come pick me up, and then the homeboys come to pick me up, and I'm actually leaving them. So the whole time she thought that I was with good people, that was, you know, doing the right things. And we didn't have no cell phones back then. We didn't have Snapchat. We didn't have Instagram. You know, nobody could post, oh, this party out in the woods, or, you know, that wasn't an option. So it was a lot easier for us to manipulate, you know, things that we were doing in such a small area.
No, I feel that. And I remember going back to, a lot of times people will blame the parent, and they'll be like, yeah, but you know, your kid was doing, or you wasn't paying attention to your kid. Man, to be honest with you, when I was younger, my mom was working 2 and 3 jobs. Like, she was imputing knowledge into us, and she was putting things inside. Hey, do the right thing. You know, you want to work hard. You want to do, stay out of trouble and stuff. But honestly, in high school, I was doing some stuff she found out later on. But it always irks a slight nerve in me when people be like, but where's the parents at? And I'm like, man, you got society influencing somebody. They can't watch you at all points in times. And like you said, I come from a small town too. So my mom had met my friends, their parents. She was cool with them. Like, she knew where I was, but she didn't really, like, you can't really know where somebody is unless you're physically there with them. So it's all trust at that point. So no, I definitely can see it. And if anybody's listening right now and they're like, oh man, it's a bunch of whatever, like, I want you to really think about, like, do you actually know what your kids are doing? And I'm gonna just call it out like that, because unless you're there, society has so many influences. And to be honest with you, between the three of us, we probably know a lot of people who've done a lot of stuff. And when you meet their parents, you're just good, wholesome people that, you know, it's just want to take care of the community, want to, you know, I raise my kids right and stuff. But then you look at their kid and be like, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all done stuff like that. Same thing with me coming from a small town. I just like you, Josh. I was hanging out with my cousins. They 4 years older than me. I went to the games with them. Everybody go to the McDonald's, hang out after all the high schools play. Everybody show up at one point. You with people, they're drinking. And when I talk about small communities, this is where the cops, when they pull you over, they know who you are. Gonna go home.
Yep.
There was, at that point in those days, they weren't jailing kids for drinking. And also, that's where you got your beer man and the people selling beer in the neighborhood. You ain't had to go to a liquor store because they go buy it all. They sell you the beer for $1, $2 a can. And so, coming from those areas, it definitely, I won't say allow, but it makes it easier because we're tiresome, man. Oh, they in the street. But since it was so small, we weren't going anywhere. And when
Right.
you were in the street, you was with the street in the street with everybody that you knew, which was family. And pretty much other people could have been your family too. So I definitely know where you're coming from. And those individuals that give you the alcohol takes me back to Menace to Society, where he's like, "Oh, go give him a."
Yeah.
It's what it was. That's what it was. And he had gave Kane at that young age that little hit. But when Kane got older and recognized, he was like, okay, I'm not going to do that to that same extent. So, Josh, now that we've kind of crossed over, let's get to the meat. Let's talk about the incident or the accident as it went down from your memory, your perspective. And I remember you dropped the release where you actually returned back to the site. Just take us through that whole thing.
Well, the accident, I don't have any memorization of it whatsoever. And it's kind of ironic that we're here today. I actually just spoke with someone who was at the scene of the accident that night. And I asked her, I was like, well, how was I? And she was like, I was going in and out. And she said I had a lot of blood on my face. And I said, what? She was like, yeah, because I have no marks, no scars. Like, if you see me right now, you wouldn't even be able to tell that I was in an accident. And I was kind of amazed that there was, blood and stuff all over my face. And she said that she remembers, and she kind of confirmed this for me, that as they were putting me on a stretcher and trying to get me in the ambulance, they started to lose me. And they had to drive me down to the fire department so that they could put me on a helicopter to fly me out to a Virginia medical center. And so I was kind of in and out of it still, I would say, when it first happened. And I remember them wheeling me up because it was a big hospital. I remember them wheeling me up, up to the hospital, but I didn't know where I was going. And I was still like kind of all of it, like, what's going on? I knew that I was in the hospital. I knew it in my bed and they were moving me. And I remember when I was laying in the hospital bed and I had a lot of visitors to the point where the hospital was like, hey, you guys gotta, slow the visitors down. He needs his rest. Well, I have a friend who's like a brother to me. And it was the first time where me and him were actually alone in the room. And, he looked at me and he was just like, and he's real blunt. And he was like, yo, you killed somebody. I'm like, what? He was like, yeah. And my mind immediately went to like, why? I started immediately thinking like, why didn't I die? I felt like because I couldn't remember anything, and if I was to die, it would just been gone. Versus somebody who was going out to do something for their family, who was just doing what was right, and me on the other hand wasn't doing anything that was right, and I was the one that survived. So the time that I had found out about it, I immediately started to question why I survived. And then I had to deal with the thought process of you might be going to prison. And I had never been in trouble a day in my life to where I was ever incarcerated. So I spent 7 days in the hospital. And then when I got out, I spent another about 2 months before they even charged me with a DUI causing death. So I had this 2-month period where I didn't know what to do. I was coaching middle school basketball, and it was like, hey, should I go coach? And I think that's where one of the things that I kind of regret on how I handled the situation, because I took some advice to go coach and to act like everything was normal. And I find that to be very disrespectful to the family. But all I was doing at the time, I was terrified. I was just really following directions of my attorney. And I had later on went with another attorney. And then by the time, I got with him, he tried to reach out to the family, and they really didn't care to hear from me, which is understandable because they never got I'm sorry. They never got nothing. I went back coaching football 7 days later, and I started coaching basketball. But all I was doing was listening. I even asked at a point like, hey, should I say so? They're like, no, don't say anything. And then they was like, well, delete your Facebook. So I deleted my Facebook and then made another Facebook. And it was like I was hiding something. I had nothing to hide. Like, I was drinking that day. I wrecked. So like I just think like I was misinformed earlier, but then again, I'm an adult and I should have thought for myself, but I was acting out of fear. And I probably handled it the wrong way, in that first 2-month period. And then, so when all that happened, and it was like, oh, well, I'm going to get you this plea deal. And this is what the lawyer that I ended up going with, and I'll never forget, I left out of his office and my man, all right, I got this. I'm good. He's going to help me get this plea deal. I'm going to be on house arrest. I'm going to work. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting home. I'm laying down because I was working overnights for FedEx. The phone rings, ring, and answer the phone. I was like, hello. And I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, Josh, I got some news for you. And at this point, I'm excited. Like, he's like, they don't want your plea deal. He said, his exact words, they want you in prison. And then that's when it hit. And this was still in January. And I didn't get sentenced until September. So from January to September, I wasn't that invisible drunk driver. I wasn't the star athlete. I wasn't the fun offensive coordinator. I wasn't the young, exciting first year coach at Fairmount. For the first time in my life, like all eyes were on me for the wrong reasons. And I had to figure out how I was going to deal with that. And then on top of, you about to go to jail. And ain't nothing you can do about it. So like that period of time right there really tested me early, and it came all at one time. It was like a punch. And it was like, what are you going to do? Because for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't that guy anymore. I was the man that everybody wanted. I was the man that messed up, and there was nothing I could do to get out of it.
Ooh, wow. So on that, now you get incarcerated. We know that once people get incarcerated, some individuals, they go in, they're able to do the time, they're able to come out, they're able to get back into society with their life. When you first went in, what was your mindset?
Well, the first day, I'll never forget it. The judge looked at me and said, "We see that it's fit that you serve 2 to 10 year sentence." Boom. And it was like, okay, gotta put your big boy pants on. And they handcuffed me. And I remember they walked me across the street and then they handcuffed me to a chair. And that's when reality hit. It wasn't even when they put the handcuffs on me at first. It was when I went to sit down and I was across the street and they handcuffed my ankles to a chair. And I had to wait for a sheriff to come to drive me to the jail. And as I said before, I'd never been in jail before a day in my life. But my father was in and out of prison and jail my whole life. And as a kid, I used to wonder what excited my dad so much that he kept going back to prison. So my whole life, I always wondered what it was like in jail. What was it like on the outside? So sadly, I was more intrigued about what it was going to look like on the ride up there. And the guy, the sheriff that was driving me knew me from high school. Like I said, everybody knew everybody. So we're having a normal conversation about when I was playing in Jefferson. I'm like, we're talking about my high school days. Dog, I just got sentenced to a 2 to 10 year sentence. You know, like, but I mean, it kind of eased me. You know, I'm thankful for that moment. And then I remember they put me into a holding cell. It was like 10 other people in this little old cell. And they brought us some food and it was jail food. And that's just like when reality hit, like, you're here. So they walked me in. This was hours later. I had to shower and all that. And then they walked me straight down the hallway because where booking was and straight down is where I went. I went to E1. And I remember when it was a young little CO, and he, again, recognized me from sports. As I'm my first day in jail, he wants to talk to me about, whoa, I remember when y'all beat Martinsburg. Like, again, dude, I've got a 2 to 10 year sentence, and y'all want to talk about high school sports. And he shut the door behind me. Before he shut the door, he said, "Welcome to the jungle." And I didn't know what that meant. He showed me where my bunk was, and I had to walk upstairs to my bunk. I walked up there, and they put me in a single cell with 2 people. So I had to sleep on the floor. And when I went to go lay down, I smelled something. I was like, this is a smell. And I turned over, and where this cell, where my cellie was in there by himself, and he used to spit across the cell against the wall. So in the corner was nothing but his saliva in the corner. And I'm sitting there like, man, I ain't gonna make it. Like, I'm sleeping on the floor. He's got hawking loogies all over the wall. Like, I've got to lay here. And so I moved my mat, because that's all they give is a mat, closer to the door. And I remember I sat back, I looked up, and there was an inmate had rolled on the wall one day at a time. And I knew then that was my sign that I just had to worry about taking life one moment, 1 minute, 1 hour at a time. And that if I would just focus in on just conquering that day, I was going to be all right. I'm not saying that it was easy, but I had a quick reminder when I got into that cell of how I was going to serve this time. And my motto the whole time was one day at a time. So I had a wave of emotions, you know. When I seen the one day at a time, it kind of eased me for a moment. And then it was count time when I went in there. So nobody was out when I had went in. It was completely silent. And I had went to sleep during count time because it took a while. And I remember when I woke up, my cellie was out and I just heard everybody. So I got up and I looked out the door and I recognized like 5 people I went to school with. And I was like, yo, there's such and such, there's such and such, such and such. To the point where I walked out and I'm walking down a little walkway to get to the step, and all here is like slope. And I'm like, yo, what's up? And then boom, I'm right at home. So it was like they took me underneath their wing to show me the ropes. So like I didn't have that adjustment period because I was basically with a couple of the homies that I didn't even know was locked up. Like one of them I hadn't seen since elementary. And he was the first person that said slope. And, he gave me, some food, some hygiene. And I'm like, all right, I'm comfortable. The only thing that I was worried about was my son, which was 3 when I got incarcerated. And my biggest worry was like, is he going to forget me? Like, is he going to hate me for the fact that like I did him the same way that my father did me? And that's when I, really started to realize, not that I didn't realize it before, like, man, my father was an addict. He didn't mean what he was doing. He was just trapped. And this was the circumstances that he put himself in. So like, it gave me a better understanding of like my relationship with my father. But at the same time, it was like, how can I mend whatever may be broken with my son throughout this time? So that was all within the first probably 2 or 3 hours of me being incarcerated. Those wave of emotions, but I was able to adjust because of the people that I was surrounded with.
Wow. Now, Josh, let me ask you this though. So you said, and this is something Tyrus and I has talked about before, and I think it's a principle, and I don't want people to skip past this. Even in jail, you were talking about like just take it a day at the time, right? And so you were looking from 2 to 10 years, and I think a lot of people psych themselves out. Now, granted, you don't want to be in jail. Like no one wants to be in jail, right? Like we don't want to be in situations where we're kind of like herded like cattle, or like we're not free to do what we want. But a lot of people will psych themselves out and whatever it is by saying, because you could have easily said, man, I got to make it 10 years, man, whatever, 2 years, man, I got to make it 5 years. I got to do whatever. And all of a sudden you going crazy because you're like, oh, it's day 200 of 5 years. Like it's day 300 of 10 years. And so you start to kind of become something else because you're not taking it a day at the time. You're thinking about the end result in the big picture. So I'm glad you touched on that, because I think even in your situation, it still went to show that you had to be in that moment. And if you could just execute in that moment, you can come out at the end. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on though, and I'm gonna kick it over to you, Tyrus. When you saw your friends in there, and then and let's fast forward to now that you're out, but I know we'll go back, on track, Tyrus. When you saw your friends that were in there, like people who really was like, yo, what's up? Like you in jail right now. After you leave that environment, was there anything that kind of kicked into your mind that you said, you know what, man, I always believe that there's power in proximity, and it can be positive or negative. And so when you're hanging around certain people, you may end up like them, right? When you go to a different area, you're going to rise up or come down based on what's going on there. Was there anything that you said, you know what, I got to change who I'm hanging around, or like I gotta do something else, because if these cats knew me in here, man, that, of course, that's why, we don't ever want to kill anybody. We don't ever want to like take a life, or like even just end up in jail for whatever reason. But did it ever dawn on you that like, bro, I got to change who I'm hanging around?
I think not necessarily change who I didn't think change who I would hang around, and comparing that with prison, because in prison, let's start with jail. I learned the most from people who murdered somebody. I remember my first day, I was sitting there playing a game called Back Alley. And then, we had all asked each other our charges, and all 3 of them was on first-degree murders. And they are people who just made a mistake. And I think there's a lot of times people look at prisoners or people that make mistakes and put this image on them. They put this stigma on them, and it's like, yo, they may have lost it for 10 seconds. He's 30 years old, for 10 seconds did something that cost them their life. So I didn't look at it as in I got to change the people I hang with, because the people that you would think, hey, I shouldn't be hanging with, were the people that I learned from the most in there. See, there's two different worlds, from out here than in here, than in there. So, but one thing that I did understand that I wasn't going to get comfortable with being there. And the people that I hung with drove that in me. They drove, don't get comfortable, come up with a routine, and stay off the stress box. The stress box was the phone. You had to learn how to live inside, because if I was to focus on everything outside, man, I would never have peace. Like I live here. So the people, like I said, the people that you would think I wouldn't hang with were the people that I hung with, because they taught me the most. Now, when I went to prison, I went to a low security prison. It was filled with addicts. Really, we were, it was more like a drug type of prison, but I was educated and I used it to my advantage. So when I went to prison, I was a teacher assistant. I helped people get GEDs. I tutored people in their college classes. And then, when I got through that, I went to a drug program, which was ran by the inmates. And I got the coordinator job there, and I ran that program. And then when they graduated me out of there, I went to road crew, and I worked there. So like I used my background and everything that I've been through and accomplished in life to my advantage in prison. So I tell people this all the time, man. I wouldn't take prison back for the world. People ask me all the time. I regret that I wasn't around my son, but prison is who made me who I am today. I wouldn't have found purpose if I didn't go to prison. If I didn't go to prison, I have a quick story. You guys, know me from Game Changers.
Yep.
The very first time that I ever spoke in a school, I was the coordinator of a program, the RSET program, and I was told, hey, listen, you're going to come speak at the school. You're going to give me McDonald's. You're not going to put me in shackles. You're going to take me to a school and I get to talk to them about being a prisoner? Yeah, I'm down. I didn't ask no questions. I get in the car, we're riding, and I get car sick because we're in the hills, the sticks of West Virginia. They're going like this, and I'm sitting in the back, man, my head's hurting, and I'm laying down. I remember I said, Mr. Murphy, man, what you got me into? He said, you're going to talk to the student body. And I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, you going to talk to the 9th and 10th graders first? Well, it was the 12th and 10th graders first and 11th and 9th graders. So we walk into the school. They're in school. We walk into an auditorium. They put us up there. The lights just shine on. There's 3 of us. And he tells us, he was like, oh, well, such and such, y'all going to talk first and we'll let Josh finish. And then the bell rings. And then all these kids start falling in this room. And I'm talking 1,000 kids. And I ain't never done this a day before in my life. And at the time, I was still struggling with forgiving myself for what I did because I wanted the family to forgive me. When I went to prison, my biggest thing was, you can keep me in here in prison as long as the people forgive me. I was more worried about them forgiving me than I was worried about getting out. And I remember I wrote a letter to them and got in trouble because you was not allowed to reach out to the victims, which I didn't know. And the day that I stepped on that stage in front of 1,000 some kids and I talked, I felt like I was on the basketball court. I felt like I was in a football team. I felt like I was running the 100-meter dash at the state track meet, and I was going to win. And when I left, I felt my healing begin to start. So if they would have gave me house arrest and gave me the smack on the wrist, I would have never walked into my purpose. I went from 0.159 to 0.000 with the mindset when I was speaking. As I spoke, I began to heal. Just like when you guys seen the video of me going back to the scene of the accident, that moment where I just sat there because I didn't remember anything. But I know what people tell me, so I can see the mailboxes and I can see how it represents a life. I can see how, that tree represents another life. It began to heal me. So prison, what people meant to break me, what giving me prison ultimately built me. So I thank everybody who says that he deserves prison or that, you know, he's not ready to come home, because you built a man that's able to sit here today and say that I'm worthy to step in front of a group of kids. I'm worthy enough to speak to you about things that you're going through. Like I have the confidence and the testimony to understand I know what it is you're going through. And that's why I'm here today, because I'm able to pull you out of what you're going through or help ease your way out of it. And if easing your way out of it is a slow process, that you got to understand that if you're living in one day at a time, and that, you know, the bright light may not be on you, but you're creeping closer to the light each day. And, you know, if we're not here doing what we're called to do, man, we're failing people. And it is my duty. I took a life. So who am I to sit down on this and just act like, oh, I served my time, I'm good. Oh, I did what I was supposed to do. No, like that ain't even an option. I have no choice but to do what I'm doing, because somebody was laid to rest because of the decision I made. So I may not be able to bring his life back, but I'm gonna honor his life every day by what I do. So when I do this, it's not about fame, it's not about money, it's about doing what's right. I believe if you you do the right thing, the next best thing will come. You know, and it's just who I am now. Remember how I said when I was drinking, that was who I am? Well, when I'm sitting here watching TV and, you know, I'm scrolling through and I'm looking at, you know, motivational quotes, or I'm trying to post something, it's not just for a like, it's because somebody needs to hear it. And if I don't do that, what then they used to put me back in prison. Really, because I made it to do this.
Wow.
But in order for me to do it, I had to suffer those 3 years in prison. I remember I knew I grew up when I got something called a flat in prison, which was the parole board basically telling me, you ain't going home. We'll see you next year. And one of my friends was, you know, one of them revolving doors. He goes in and out of prison all the time. But he came to me like a week later. He said, man, Brown, I was worried about you. And I said, what? He said, because we never knew like if you were going home or not. But I didn't understand. I didn't know. He said he didn't know how I would take the flat. And he told me, he said, Josh, he was like, you handled the flat better than I ever seen anybody ever. And I had knew right then and there, was like, okay, like there's a reason for me to still, you know, still being in this position. There was something else that I had to do and had to learn while I was in prison to get out to be the best version of me. I wouldn't have felt like that 2 years, you know, before that when I first got there. So I grew up. I may have been 27 when I went to prison, but I was probably acting like I was still 16. But I walked out of prison a 32-year-old man about his business and was going to be a better father and was going to make a difference in this world no matter what, no matter how many times you tell me no, all I needed was one yes.
Incredible. Wow. And I was going to take you back, but you went ahead and cleared all of that up as far as the purpose, as far as the transition, as far as what was that turning point, which was standing in front of those kids. You hit all of those aspects. What made you, after that fact, or what pushed you to continue your journey in reaching out to kids, talking about alcohol, um, you know, talking to the colleges? What, and I understand you said that to honor his life, you continue to do that. Is there anything else that drives you, that motivates you? And what are you seeking to hinder? What do you want to stop? If you can talk to somebody listening, what is it that you would say to them that may be in a similar situation or haven't hit that downturn yet, but they're doing what you were doing?
Your best thinking got you there. A lot of kids think that they have it all figured out. They were just like me. And I always said this. When I was in the 9th grade, I remembered a guy coming to speak to me. I was an older African-American man. And he probably spoke for an hour. I don't remember nothing he said, but one thing. He said it can and will happen. And I've carried that with me my whole life. So I said to myself, I felt the healing when I did it. But the impact that we have on these kids when we step on the stage can change a life. So not only am I honoring this life, I'm changing somebody's life. I'm changing the next Josh Brown's life. That when they're 27, that their change doesn't have to be a denied parole, a victim's family telling you that you're a murderer and that you use your car as a weapon, or you just being. I was harassed so bad in prison by the one particular canine guy. He would trash my bunk. He would he would always accuse me of being high. Like, I was so bad racially profiled by this one canine guy that he almost had me want to come out of my character. I don't want a kid to have to go through that. I want a kid to make the right decision. So like when it gets to the point of, am I going to go left? Am I going to go right? Well, no, sometimes I got to stand still. I ain't got to go left or right, because maybe left or right is wrong, but where I'm at right now is where I need to be. I have to tap into those kids' minds to know that they can change, that their best thinking that they got right now is really what's got them in the situations they're in. And I'm going to tell you, there was one girl who really confirmed what I was feeling. She came up to me after I spoke and she was crying, and it's like, man, like, what am I going to say? And she told me that her father had been locked up in and out of her life, her whole life, and she hated him. But hearing me speak allowed her to realize that everybody in prison isn't a bad person. So, like, what do you say when you have this 16-year-old who hates their father, but she now is beginning to try to love her father because I spent 45 minutes on the stage? Listen, a football game would never do that for me. A track meet would never do that for me. Me coaching football would never do that for me. It brings joy. It brings, cheers. But I don't really see how it changes a life the way that I can do on the stage, or the way I can do in your classroom, or the way we can get on the Zoom and talk. So it's building. Like, we've got to come together. And the times that we're living in right now, like, we need each other more than ever. Like, we've got to lock arms and build each other up instead of tearing each other down. And so, but my love is for that youth. So I'm going to be there and build them up through my story, because I went through it for a reason. I'm not going to hold it in, and just hopefully they hear and want to make the change because they see the direction that they're heading in, because I didn't see it. It wasn't even a thought process of me wrecking a car, let alone killing somebody and going in prison. But the reality is that could have happened anytime I started a car, and I never thought about it.
Yeah. Now, Josh, and I know this is a tough question, and I don't think anybody has the answer, but I do want to get your perspective. How do you reach the youth and even an adult with information? And think about yourself when you were coming up and you were going, and when you were younger, that don't want to hear it or don't believe it. How do we begin to transition? Because I've too been in school speaking to kids, and you have some kids that I don't want to hear it. How do we break the barrier? How do we begin to tear down the wall, even with an experience that you could show on paper? Hey, here's proof of what I did. Some kids just, either they need more time, either they're trapped, either their environmental influence is just too tight around them. What do you believe, or what is your perspective on how we can break through the barriers?
First of all, we better live it, because these kids are going to watch us and they're going to see. In this day and age, I can go speak to somebody in Houston. They can be inspired by what I'm doing. They can follow me on Instagram, on Snapchat, somebody tag me doing something that's opposite of what I'm saying, and that kills everything that I'm saying. So first of all, I believe that we have to live what we're saying and just be authentic and real. Don't go in there trying to be something that we're not, because I'm the best version of me. And all I can do is, with an open heart and with love, just express to them what it is that I've been through, and hopefully have that aha moment that, hey man, I gotta change. And then if I don't get them to change, hopefully I've set the foundation for the next person to come in and build on top of that. So I realize that every time I go into a room or a classroom, I'm not going to change everybody. But what I want to do is wake you up. Because, you know, I may speak, you know, in 2021, but Coach Val may come speak in 2022, and they be like, hey, remember I said that I used to always remember that a cannon will happen. What Josh used to say, man, it can happen to anybody. And then this Coach Val just said, man, oh, I was a principal. I was 0.9 or whatever, and now I'm a principal. Like, oh, man, like, hey, this is real. Like, my decisions are going to ultimately dictate the way my life goes. So it is really about living it and being authentic and just delivering it in a way that they can understand it.
Good, good. And another question for you, going back to the beginning, and I don't want to play semantics with the wording and the terminology, but do you feel at that time that you were an alcoholic, or did you just abuse alcohol? And I say it that way because there are some people that drink a lot and they can stop. But then there are those people who need the 12-step programs, the AA, or the interventions, because they cannot stop. Do you feel like you would have been able to stop, or were you an alcoholic in prison is actually what stopped you?
No, I was never an everyday drinker, but when I drank, I got drunk.
Yeah.
Like there was no, hey, let's go to the bar, have 2 or 3 drinks. I go to the bar, I'm gonna get hammered.
Yeah.
But then I may not go back for a week or 2 or 3. But when I go, I'm going all in. I treated drinking the way I treated sports. I'm going to compete to be more drunk than you. And then I may not drink for a couple of weeks. But I was always, I think I drank more in high school and college than I did as an adult. Like when I was in, true story, when I got in the car accident, I had stopped drinking for like 60 days because I was just like, okay, man, I'm coaching, let me chill.
Yeah.
And then there was that day and I got drunk. It wasn't no, couple drinks. I got drunk. I got hammered is what they say, around here. And I got in the car. So I don't think I was ever necessarily controlled by I have to drink. It was just like, oh, I'm going to just drink, and then I could stop whenever I wanted to. But when I decided to pick it back up, it was like I never left off. It was like where some people may stop drinking for a period of time and then they got to build their tolerance back up. When I walked to my car that day, somebody walked with me who is one of my close friends. I'm not going to say their name. And he said, I never stumbled. I never stuttered. I never nothing. And he thought that I was okay to get in the car. And I was 0.159 drunk because I always just had a high tolerance. And I didn't have to do it every day, but I was able, it would be nothing for me to drink a fifth or fifth and a half straight, shot for shot, and go do whatever it is. But that was like my biggest downfall is just that people didn't see it.
Yep.
Like there was so many times that I'd be drunk. I mean, I was drunk in church and people didn't know it. I was drunk in school. I used to sit in school with a bottle of Vladimir, nasty little $8 bottle and juice and drink all day. And nobody said nothing new. Now, Now, as an adult now, no, how did they not smell it? I don't know. But the way I carried myself, you wasn't gonna know it. The same way I was at the track meet and I won was the same way I was in places and people had no idea that I was drinking.
Yeah.
But it wasn't every day, but when I decided to do it, I held it together.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up though, Tyrus, because I think a lot of people think, and like you said, semantics, like, because there are some people who can drink and then they could just cut it off whenever they want to. But I know quite a few people that they think that they're that person, but every single day you keep finding that drink, or you got to get off work and you got to have that drink. And it's almost like something's wrong in your routine if you hadn't done that yet. Like, I can't go to sleep until I do that. And so, I like how you outline that for the folks, because you have to understand, are you someone who just drinks, or are you someone who needs that drink? If not, your day's thrown off.
I never here's my thing. My drinking was associated with certain events. If I went to a game, I'm gonna get hammered. You know, if I go to this cookout, I'm gonna do this. If I go to the bar, I'm gonna do this. But if you just want to go for a casual day, you know, down in the city or whatever, we go down there, I can not drink and be fine. But let's go to this football game. Listen, the first thing we're doing is going to the liquor store. We're filling the cooler up. Hey, you calling me over for a cookout? And I'm getting drunk. It's not even a question. Like, what we drinking is how much we drinking. But let's say, oh man, we going to dinner at Applebee's. I'm getting a lemonade or a Coke. Like, if I was going to go do a certain thing in life, you knew I was going to drink. So it was tied to certain things in life that I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to go do this. Okay, I'm gonna drink. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. I'm good. So it wasn't like I have to or need to. It's like when I know I'm going there, let's cut it on. Let's get there.
Yeah, I think there's power in that though, because I think it even validates what happened even more, because you were the type of person who can turn it off and on, and I don't really need it. You know, someone that actually needs it per se, they, you know, think about the chance of how they end up, you know, drunk driving or doing something like they don't need to be doing, or even, I mean, I've seen some drunk folks do some crazy stuff. They on the front lawn yelling stuff or doing whatever, and it's like, how can your life change, you know, just based on you've developed a habit where you have to have it? And it's like, you know, in your case, it still happened, and you were still the type of person that's like, yo, I don't have to do this. So, you know, the chances go up in my opinion.
Yeah, it was just a want to. It was never a need. You know, it was enjoyable. Like, it was something I was used to. I started early age and it just carried on. But there was never a time where, hey, I need. I remember when I was in prison, I was working, this quick story, and my supervisor called me in the back office and offered me a whole bottle of moonshine. And when I told him no, first of all, I thought he was setting me up.
Right.
Like, nah, I'm good. So then he called another inmate back and he drank it. And oh, that's cool, but I'm good. You know, it was like, that was the day, it was like, dang, you know, like, I ain't gonna get that opportunity again. It's like, I was like, okay, you're right. Like, you don't need it, but it was just fun to have it. But what was I gonna do in prison with that bottle of moonshine? Like, what am I gonna do fun? Like, that excites me. I'm not going to have the music, the partying that I usually have. You know, it's not, you know, at the tailgate. Prison did not trigger alcohol. It didn't connect. So even though, like, I probably could have sold it, it made a great amount of money, you know, but it wasn't intriguing to me. It's like, okay, like, yeah, it was a full bottle. I mean, you know, but what am I going to do with it? So it wasn't like, oh my God, I gotta have the alcohol. It was just like, okay, I'm not in the setting to where I even want a drink. So my thing was me is learning what were my triggers. Like, I'm not going in the bar now. Like, no reason possible am I going to a bar, because I know the music, the bar. Get like 2 or 3 good songs in. I may be like, hey. Because it's a trigger for me. I know that I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I know that I could possibly break. Why do that? So it's about learning yourself. I always say, man, get a PhD in yourself. I can't go anywhere if I don't understand, who I am. How can I accept my situation if I don't know who I am? So I had to really search myself and understand that there was some friends I had to cut off. And I tell you, one of the best things about prison is friends cut themselves off to me. They made it real easy for me to come out and be like, nah, I'm good. Like I did 3 years. I ain't hear from you one time. You see my mother 30 times. And I purposely asked her, hey, did they ask about me? No. So when I'm out now, you want to go party for what? If I get locked up or do something dumb, I'm going to be there by myself. You ain't there for me. So I learned who Josh Brown really was.
Truth. And I brought that question up with the semantics because I've seen so many people growing up that have to have the alcohol. They have to drink. I was never that person that had to have it, had to drink growing up. I wasn't that guy. But when I got in the military and I went to Korea, where outside the base there's 100 bars, and on the weekend what you do is drink. Everybody drinks. Everybody does it. And you drink, like you said, if you drink, it was man, we used to go from bar to bar drinking what they call pitchers. And in Korea it was soju. And in Korea, soju wasn't regulated. So you didn't know if you got 10 proof or 80 proof. So they put it in a pitcher, put some Sprite, boom, color, you race that. Then you go to the next club. They have what they call an ammo bowl, which is nothing but a fruit bowl with 10 straws or however many straws, and you race that with people. And then you go shot to shot. I can remember each bar and what we would drink at the bar. And I think what saved a lot of people in that atmosphere was since we were there, we couldn't drive. So you would stumble back to the main gate, and then the Koreans that drove the cabs would be there to take us back to the dorm. Now, when I got back here, I would still have a drink, but I never drank like that again because I'm like, it's not even realistic to do that here. I got to drive. It's twice as expensive.
I was about to say, plus you're going to be 500 in the hole.
Right. I never had that thing where, oh man, I got to go get these bottles. And everybody that I know that was in Korea with me that's back here now, they don't drink like that, but we all did it there. That was the pregame on the 151 in the dorm before we even went out. Then do a whole night. And it was fast too, Josh, because we had curfew. Curfew when I first got there was 1 o'clock. So you talking about going out at 11 or 12 and being back in an hour or two and getting hammered as fast as you can. And then they changed it to 3. And then you would go back on base and go to like the officer club. But there is a difference between people who socially drink and can quit and then people who don't. So as the audience is listening, make sure, like Corey said, a lot of people think they're that other person. And I know one individual that he always says, everybody say I got a problem, but I don't. But he really does, and he doesn't see it. So we want to make sure that as you're listening, you can identify the difference. And either way, no drinking and driving, no pumping people up. Because I heard that same thing. Oh man, that's a designated drunk driver. It's not even worth the risk of the chance because it only take one time. Now,
they also pumping you up because they're not the ones that want to get behind the wheel.
Exactly.
So do they really love you? And I question it. Listen, I honestly question, do you love yourself if you get into a car with somebody who's drunk? And this is a controversial thing that I've said. I've made a post about this a while back. I get so frustrated when people get in cars with people who's drinking, something tragic happens, and everybody goes after the person driving. And I'm not saying like, oh man, let's just take up for these drunk drivers. No, but we've got to get to points where we normalize, man, listen, everybody's making a decision. The same decision you got trying to make this man get in his car and drive is the same decision that you get in there driving. You ain't no different. You are in a car with somebody drinking is driving. Like the same, like none of you do not have control. You don't. Like, I mean, everything is impaired. So if something tragic happens, man, like, hey, They got into the car.
Where was the friends?
We've got
Passengers.
to make it normal to be like, yo, like ain't none of us driving.
Right.
Like I'm not getting in the car with you, period. Because no, not that, oh, if you get pulled over, you're the one going to jail. But no, if you wreck food, who say you gonna make it just because you weren't driving? So like I not only not only do we have to normalize that drinking and driving is a no-go, period. Getting in a car with somebody that's drinking and driving is no, it shouldn't even be a question. Once the alcohol comes, the keys got to go. Because it can happen to anybody. It can happen to the everyday drinker. It can happen to the random drinker. It can happen to the first time drinker. Like the minute you drink, it can happen. You can wreck a car sober. So what makes you think you can't wreck it drunk? It's a decision. It's planning. It's it's caring for the people on the other end of the road too. It ain't just about you. I killed somebody that wasn't in the car with me. He was going to the grocery store. So it's just like, man, do you love yourself and others enough to be like, it's not worth it?
Wow.
Yep, I always say, because typically them surcharges are starting to hit at that time, and it's like peak hours. That $60 Lyft, that $60 Uber, probably save you $60,000 in legal fees, maybe more.
Yeah, or life. So
yeah.
Don't let it deter you. If you feel like you have to go out and you have to drink, go ahead and do that Uber. And today, is to me, even if you wanted to use an excuse, there's no excuse because, of course, in small town back then, there were no Ubers, there were no taxis, there were nothing like that. So somebody had to drive. But today especially, it's so easy to just Uber. Where no matter where you are in the world, but you can get somebody to come get you. Now, Josh, as we get ready to wrap this up, the final question that I have for you is: did you ever get closure with the family?
No.
And how does it weigh on you now, or have you reached that place to where you have forgiven yourself and you're able to move on?
It's still a tough situation because I didn't mean what I did. And like I said before, my actions at the beginning of the whole thing, when they deserved at the bare minimum, an apology. I took some bad advice, and I can't wait till the day where that can happen. But I also understand that I can't live life holding on to, oh my God, are they ever going to forgive me? So it's kind of like a up and down thing where like I'm gonna live my life because I'm living my life doing the right thing. But at the same time, I wish you could understand that I wasn't the guy you called a murderer. I didn't purposely go use my car as a weapon. I was told by them that I wasn't a role model. I was a role model to those kids. Those kids loved me. And those same kids who came, I had more kids come see me in prison that I coached than some of my friends. But I want them to know that I made a mistake that I can't take back. I am a good person, that I truly am sorry. If I could do anything to get to bring him back, I would. So that's a tough one. I can't give you just a straight yes or no answer because I think I live in both worlds with that. That's just one thing that like I live for the day to just sit down and be like, hey, listen, I'm sorry because you deserve it. And that's just the right thing to do. And I feel that way. I don't want to do it just because, oh my God, let's say it. So no, like in my heart, I want you to know I'm sorry. But at the same time, I used to totally live straight for their approval.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got out of just so much for the approval, I walked into purpose, and now I live life with a smile. But still, I wish that I think the greatest speech I give one day is the day that they can go up there and tell the kids of the pain that I caused, and then I can tell them why they shouldn't do what they're doing. That to me is like, people say like, okay, like LeBron James, he plays basketball to win the NBA championship. My NBA championship would be me going to a school, somebody and listen, they can say whatever they want about me, negative, whatever. They can, if that's how they feel, because those kids need to hear that.
Yeah.
They need to see the magnitude of the pain that I caused, but then still know that, like, a double shoot. Okay, listen, people deserve a second chance, but at the same time, man, you don't even need a second chance if you just do it right the first time. So I would really love for that to happen. But at the same time, I have to continue on with what I'm doing. And hopefully in due time, that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, that's totally clear. I mean, I understand the answer completely. And, you know, you're walking in your purpose. You're doing what God called you to do. You're leading. You're being an example. You've shown how mistakes can change lives, not just yours, but impact others. And the kids absolutely need, and people need to hear your perspective. And it would be beautiful if one day that they hear their perspective, because that shows everything, the complete picture, the holistic view, all of it wrapped into one. And this is the impact of those decisions that you think are just, I'm having fun, I'm young, this is the time of my life, you want to go do X, Y, and Z. No, because everything that we do has a consequence, whether it's positive or negative. You just have to choose the right decision and understand that immediate gratification, having fun at a party, isn't worth the lifelong trial or situation that you can go through. So, Josh, I definitely appreciate you for joining us, for sharing your story with us, for being transparent. A lot of people disappear and hide and don't bring it out and don't seek to reach back and help others. But you really, really, when you showed the video of you going back to the site, when you walked around, showed the mailboxes, I mean, that's just so powerful to be back in that, for you to be back in that scene and to show how you overcame it. You've overcome. And now you're using your blessing, your gift to empower other people. And that's what we're all about. Corey, do you have any last words?
Nah, I think we hit everything I was thinking about.
Gotcha. So, Josh, how can people follow you? Where can they reach you if they want you to come speak, talk, share? How can they get in touch with you?
You can find me on joshdbrown.com, and on that site you can click on my new book, Prison of Purpose, My Road to Redemption, Your Road to Triumph. It gives you the whole storyline of me, and then it also gives you I feel like the process that I use to really see light in a dark situation, to walk out of that. Also on that page, there's booking for me if you would like me to come speak to your school. Rather, it's about being a better athlete. If it's about drugs and alcohol, if it's about decision making, you can find me on there. You can follow me on Facebook under Josh D. Brown Senior, Instagram Josh D. Brown Senior. I'm on both of those social media platforms. And be on the lookout, because I'm about to begin to start some one-on-one coaching, and I'll be listing some things on my social media and on my website for you guys to share. I encourage you just to go, follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'll be posting some, just some motivational quotes just to push people, to be more positive in their mindsets. I really, like to encourage that on my social media platforms.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Josh, again, thank you for joining us. Thank everybody that came on, that listened, that stayed. And like Corey and I always talk about, we don't want you to just hear this information. We want you to go out and share it. We want you to go out and apply it if it's you. if you know that you've been in that situation, if you know people in that situation, and it's nothing just to say, hey, think about this before you do it. A quick share, and then we'll get out of here. I'm reading some information about behavioral economics and just psychology. A lot of people wouldn't make certain decisions that they made if they just have what they call a decision stopper, something to break your pattern of decision making. So one person to just say, hey, Josh, did you think about that? Hey, Corey, did you think about that? Hey, Tyrus, did you think about that? And that stop gives us enough time to think and possibly make a different change. So even if you're listening, you know people, habitual drinkers, that get in the car and drive. I'm not here to say don't drink, period. What I am here to say is don't drink irresponsibly and risk your life and somebody else's because you won't take a moment to say, hey, let me call somebody or let me not even go out. So think about that. If you know people, reach out to Josh if you need help with this. If you want him to speak, mentor, definitely check out his book. We're big proponents of reading books. The life story is in the book. Grab the book. So we thank everybody for joining us. We'll catch you next time. And again, the Empowerment Platform, our mission, our goal is to empower you to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Josh, thank you, sir. I definitely appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys, giving me the platform to share my story and to bring light to this situation.
Absolutely. Have a good one.